We were on this, 4-lane road, and I stomped on it in like third gear. I didn't realize it, but at the back of the cars was a cop, and he was following us because he probably knew something was gonna happen. I got away, I got home, pulled the car in the garage, went inside, and told my wife that I just outran the cops. And we weren't confident that the car was gonna make it down the track. I asked Jason, I said, can I go out there and make a hit on your entrance road? And he's like, the hell you are. My name is Joel Grannas. I'm the owner of Grannas Racing and the driver of Orange Man Bad, the first H-pattern car to run 6 seconds in the quarter mile. I started out growing up in Pennsylvania in a car family, and my brothers had first gen Camaros, and my oldest brother had a 56 F100 pickup truck, and my dad had that 57 Chevy that you see behind me that he recently passed down to me. I still remember my dad taking me for rides in that car, and it's an original 4-speed car. So that's kind of where my passion for the H-pattern stuff and stick shift racing came from, is him taking me out for a ride and banging through the gears in that thing. My first car was an 85 IROC Camaro, and I got it when I was 14, and I worked on that thing and fixed it up. And back then was the days of stereo systems and subs, and I had that stuff in that car. I wasn't as much into engines as I was into the stereo stuff, so I did that. I'm going to show my age here, but back around 1999, I got a Corvette, a C4 Corvette. It was pretty quick. I think they were like 330 horsepower stock or something like that. But the one day I went out for a cruise and I got dusted by a Nissan 300ZX. And that's what started me into import cars. And that's what got me into turbo stuff. My first turbo import was a 300ZX convertible, a Z32. That car I had from around the year 2000 to around 2004, 2005. I worked with some shops over in the New York City area, and we did a single turbo conversion on that car. And it made, I think, 500, 550 wheel horsepower, and it was pretty quick. I had some fun with that car. But during that time, I was watching the whole 6-speed rivalry going on between Saad and Ryan Woon and Darren DiChiara. And I loved watching that stuff. And I always loved the Supra platform and wanted a Supra because they, the 2J engine was, everyone always said, oh, you do this much with the VG30 engine, but if you would get a 2J and put that same amount of work into it, you're gonna make, 1,000 horsepower easily. I started looking around for Supras, and Darren's car popped up. He actually decided to sell his car, and it was a great deal for what it was, for what he was selling it for. I can't remember the price. I think it was 50 grand. I think it was somewhere around 45 or 50 grand. That was back in 2010. And I was like, man, I can't pass that up. So I made him an offer, came down and picked up the car from Pennsylvania, brought it back home. The first event I really remember is taking it to Maryland for, they had a summer race, and I can't think of what the name of it was, but I went there and I ran at 8:36. And that was after, racing the car maybe 6 or 7 times. And Darren's best time in that car was 8:38. So I best his time, and I couldn't believe it. I'd never thought that would ever happen. But when that happened, it kind of lit a spark in me, and it made me want to, try to go even faster. And I wanted to try to go after SW, which he had the 6-speed record at the time. He ran 791 with a V160 and a 3.4 and I think a GT55 91. And that was the goal, was to go faster than SW and get a 790. That was the goal. And I chased that record for probably 3 years, trying to go faster than that 830s. I think my best pass on the V160 was at 819. Then I started breaking transmissions, and that's what started Grannas Racing. Was I broke that V160 twice in two events in a row, and after the second trans broke, I started to look for parts for the trans, and they were starting to come discontinued from Toyota. So that made me get really nervous, and I said to myself, how am I going to continue racing without this transmission? Because it's like the key part behind the car. To race a 6-speed car, the V160 is the best thing out there. How am I gonna continue to race without this trans? So I started looking for options, and I found the T56 Magnum, and I bought my first one and stuffed it in the car, and I went out and ran 3 830 passes in a row with that T56, and I was like, all right, I found my solution. It was funny back then. Everyone made fun of me for putting that T56 in the car. I feel like I got so much shit on the forums, and people were like, oh, why would you put a Chevy transmission in your Supra, And it's funny how it came full circle around now that's what everyone does. Everyone is putting these trans in the car, so it's kind of cool that it's at that point, and I made that impact on the community, I think. So I started my career in construction, and it was a great job. It was the family business. I learned a lot from it. I gained a great work ethic from that, working 12 to 14-hour days, 6 days a week, but it wasn't my passion. And my passion at that time was design and development work. I was actually a web developer, and I went to school for that. So after college, I moved away from the construction side of things and went into web development and built a career up in that, and eventually went out on my own, had my own kind of company doing web development, freelancing, building software and websites for companies. At the same time, I was kind of moonlighting and still racing the white car. Got to the point where I started breaking those transmissions and had to build kits, and I built that first transmission kit, and then people saw me out racing on it and started asking me for the kits. And that's kind of where Grannas Racing started, was people started seeing me racing on that new transmission setup, and they might have been having problems with their trans too, so they started switching, and then the street car guys started picking up on it, and we started putting it in a lot of street cars, and that's kind of the main base of my business now is street car guys. With the white car, even though it was mostly a race car, I would take it to street car events and car shows and meets and things like that. And the one night I went to a car show and we left, and there was 6 of us, all buddies, leaving the car show, and we were all kind of traveling together, and of course I had the fastest car there, and I had to showboat a little bit. So we were on this 4-lane road, and all of us were in a line, and I was at the front, and I stomped on it in 3rd gear, and I think it was making probably 1100 or something like that, and it just blew the tire off, and I went sideways, did a rolling burnout. I didn't realize it, but at the back of the line of us the cars was a cop, and he was following us because he probably knew something was going to happen. And I think he probably thought I was racing the car next to me, but we weren't racing. I was just kind of showboating. And so he hit the lights, and I was already pretty far out ahead at that point because I did that kind of that rolling burnout. And when he hit the lights, I kind of had to make that decision, what am I going to do here? And at that point, I was like, man, I'm going to get a street racing ticket. Do I want that, or I just want to try to get away here? And I made the bad decision, and I ran from them, and I got away. I got home, pulled the car in the garage. They weren't even near me. I don't even remember hearing the sirens. But I got home, parked the car, put the garage door down, went inside, and told my wife that, hey, I just outran the cops. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, I made a stupid decision. I was like, so I'm just gonna leave. I told her, I'm just gonna leave. I don't wanna be here in case the cops would come around, you know. So I left and went to my buddy's house, and the cops showed up at my buddy's house because he was one of the 6 cars that we were all in that group. And I guess the cop had gotten all the plates from those cars. So they showed up there, and I'm sitting inside the house, and I'm like, man, how did they find me? Like, how did they know I'm here? They're like, we ran the plates of the car sitting out in the driveway, and we see that Joel Grannas is in there. That's his truck. He needs to come out here. And I was like, well, I'm busted at this point. So yeah, I spent the night in jail, and it's a learning experience. I don't recommend doing that, but I was young and I was dumb, and you know, that was just one of my life lessons, I guess. You know, don't run from the cops. They're gonna get you eventually. And it's kind of funny too, because so my dad, back in the day, my dad was, you know, big into cars. That's why I'm into cars. But he had a Hemi Satellite, so an original 69 Plymouth Satellite with a Hemi in it, a 4-speed car. So he had this Hemi Satellite, and back in the day, I think it was in the early 70s, he ran the cops too, and he got away. But he didn't get caught. He got away with his. So just a little story that probably most people don't know about me, and I don't want to like brag about it or anything like that, but it's just, you know, it's something I did and something I learned from. Back in the mid 2010s, 2015, 2016, I was still racing the white car and trying to chase that 7-second pass is what I wanted, trying to get after SW's record. And that's when I started breaking the transmissions, and I started building the kits, and people started asking me more and more often to build them a kit. And that's when I started to like develop the company Grannas Racing with these transmission kits. Back then, I think I had a steering rack product that I did that was a small seller, but the transmission kind of really made Grannas Racing turn into what it is. So I was doing web development 5 days a week, and then I was moonlighting with Grannas Racing on the weekends and maybe on Fridays, to where I would, you know, do specific things, ship out parts for people on a Friday. And eventually the demand became so high for the transmissions that I started doing more and more days of Grannas Racing and less days of web development, until the point where it became too stressful for me to try to do the web development at night and do Grannas Racing during the day. And I just told my clients, my web development clients, that I can't do it anymore, and they're gonna have to find a new developer, and I kind of helped them transition that role and find a new person for them. But yeah, the Grannas Racing thing took off, and now that's what I do. Full time is build transmission kits and develop new products. So back around 2016, was the white car. I think I ran 817 in the car, and I was wanting to push it further and further. And at that point, I had taken the AC out of the car, the power steering. You know, it was all stripped out. It was mostly a race car at this point. But it was still just a 10-point cage and a Supra body. And there wasn't really much that I could do to the car without totally cutting it up and turning it into a full race car. And I felt like that car didn't deserve to be cut up because it's an original 6-speed car, and it kind of had sentimental value. The chassis itself wasn't super safe, and I had a family at this point. I had 2 kids, and I wanted to you know, do the best thing for my family, and also, you know, still be able to race. If you see some of the old videos of that car, you'll see how it dances down the track, and me driving the shit out of the car, basically. that was one of the limitations, and it wasn't really like that I couldn't fix that per se with that car, but to fix it right and to do it right, I wanted to build a complete chassis car. And start from scratch with it, because the white car still had all stock control arms. It was like the most basic car you could imagine with a cage in it. It was like a factory Supra with a big turbo on it and factory suspension, basically. So I bought a new chassis to build into the orange car and started from scratch with that. So when I bought this wreck car, this car that I was going to turn into the new race car, I kept it a secret. I took the car to the chassis shop, and it was there for I think 1.5 years or 2 years, being built, you know, behind the scenes. I didn't like show anyone any pictures of it. until I think the day when I posted the picture of the orange car sitting there. I think that was the first time I ever showed the car off. And it was tough to kind of keep that a secret, but at the same time, I knew it would be like a cool payoff. The mission with the car was to solve all the problems of the white car, which was the chassis, squatting and being squirrely going down the track, getting the car as light as possible to make it go as quickly as possible, and that was Doug's part of Orange Man Bad, was to build the best possible chassis in IRS form that we could do. So things progressed pretty quickly with the orange car, but we had our struggles at the same time. So we brought the orange car out to the first World Cup. I think that was in 2018 or 2019, somewhere around there. We were having so many struggles with that car and getting it running that we couldn't even get a qualifying pass. We had gotten to where there was only one qualifier left, and we weren't confident that the car was going to make it down the track for that qualifying pass. So we needed a way to test the car and make sure that it's going to, make boost and stay in power. So what we did was we took it out on the street. And I asked Jason, I said, hey, can I make a hit out on, because they have a big, the entrance is a big long straightaway. And I was like, hey, can I go out there and make a hit on your entrance road? And he's like, the hell you are. So we ended up taking it out in the street and did like 4 hits out on the street. It was like, it was like midnight. So the people that lived around there were probably like, what in the hell is going on? And everything worked, and then took it to the next morning. We made the qualifying pass, and it wasn't a great pass. We made like an 8-second pass, but we qualified for the event. We started going to testing after that, and I remember going to a small track in Baltimore. Chris from Pro Speed, my tuner, came up to go with me to the track to tune it and try to get the suspension tuned as well as we could. We ran a 768. That was our first ever 7-second pass, and it's crazy because we jumped from running 8s forever and jumped way down into a mid 7-second pass instantly. That was still on a diaphragm clutch, so I was running the face-plated T56 Tilton quad carbon clutch, I think is what I had in that car now at that point. The problem with that clutch was it was so inconsistent, and that's why the car wouldn't work, is the diaphragm clutch. So 1 out of 10 passes I'd get a good 60 foot and get a full pass. So after that 768, I was like, okay, we did what we wanted to do on the diaphragm clutch. Now it's time to put a clutch in that will be consistent and we can go rounds in. I want to actually start doing class racing, and we put the adjustable clutch in for the first time, and it was such an incredible leap in ET with that clutch. So we put that clutch in, and I think the next event we went to, we went to like a 720 second pass. So we dropped almost a half a second just by changing that clutch out. And those clutches are amazing. When I ran that 720 pass, I remember thinking man, I think that we actually could run a 6-second pass in this car, which I'd never thought that would be possible in the past. That never even entered my mind. I just wanted to run 7s. That year and a half time span, it went from running, the first 7 to going down to Bradenton for the reunion race with the mindset hey, we're going to try to run a 6 at this event. And sure enough, that was when we hit that first 690 pass. Such an incredible feeling. I didn't think it did it, because the car shut off at 1,100 feet into the pass. Everything shut off with the electrical issue, And I thought, oh, like, you know, hey, we probably just ran like a 7.1 or something like that because of the way it shut off, but it was a 690 at like 186 or something like that, or 190. When I think back to that 690 pass and how much that really meant to me, I also think about how that might not have been possible without the support of my family. Because, you know, the hours that I put in there, you know, and I have young kids. My wife was, you know, at home taking care of the kids basically all the time when I'm here at the shop working on the car, trying to get that car in shape to run those kind of passes. So I think a lot about my family and you know, how much they've sacrificed at the same time that how much I've sacrificed. That's equal to me. They've sacrificed just as much as I've sacrificed in time. And I sometimes it bothers me a lot. I'll be honest. I think about how much time I spend in cars and how much I spend away from them, and it really it makes me want to do better on that side of things and spend more time with them. I try to instill the car values into my kids as much as I can, and you know, one day I want to pass that car down to my son someday, just like my dad passed down to me, and I want him to be a car guy just like me. And I think that's a pretty common thing with that bonds us car guys together, is, you know, that passion to instill the cars into our kids. Put your hand on there. There you go. Whose car is it?
Mine.
Really? And what kind of car is it?
Supra.
Is it? Is it gonna be fast?
Yeah.
You think? Someday. Oh.
Hi.
If I have fans or kids that come up to me at the racetrack, I let them sit in the car. I want to instill that passion for cars into the next generation of kids. Like, that is one of the things, not only with my kids, but with, you know, with other people's kids too. You know, they might not have that opportunity to sit in a race car, and you know, I think most of us car guys can remember, you know, sitting in a fast car or sitting in like a Lamborghini or something like that for the first time, and you'd be like, whoa, you know, this is like a dream, you know, like this is what I want to do when I get older. I want to have a car like this when I get older. I know that was like one of my, like, I remember when I was little, I wanted a Lamborghini. I kind of still want a Lamborghini a little bit, but I think, like, I could probably have a Lamborghini right now if I got rid of all this stuff. But I kind of like these, you know, these 90s JDM, you know, the cars. I don't know, there's something about them for me that's what I like, and this was what I would choose. I put them together, you know, that's something that I built versus, you know, just going out and buying a Lamborghini. Some of the most memorable moments for me after the 690 pass is, you know, trying to go faster, of course. And the one race that I really remember is World Cup, and we had power wheelie problems. And I'm sure there's many pictures of this, but the one pass, I did a power wheelie in second gear. When it came down, it bounced, and the car just slid sideways into the other lane, and I almost crashed it. I don't know how I saved it. It's like, I think, one of my favorite videos. My kids love to watch that over and over for some reason. Yeah, I'm like, you understand how dangerous that was right there. They don't really understand that, but I've probably run 20 or 30 680, 690 passes since that first 690 pass, but we haven't really progressed an incredible leap yet. But the best pass that we've made so far is a 669 at 221, so it's my personal best ET and my personal best mile an hour. And that was at Florida 2K, I think that was 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, since then we've been on a struggle bus basically. We've been making changes to the car, trying to go faster and faster, but it hasn't all culminated yet. You know, the 669 pass was the first event that we were on solid axle. So that event was pretty incredible just in itself, because that was the first time we went out there with a brand new suspension setup. Broke a transmission on the first pass, so that screwed us on testing. So we lost almost all of our testing ability. Got the car back together and went out there and had issues. And we got to the last possible qualifying pass to try to make the event. And we finally got it all figured out, and we ran a 680. Through the rounds, to the eliminations, it went 680, 680, 680, like 4 680s in a row. It was like a bracket car on the solid axle. So it made me feel like this was the right decision. You know, going to the solid axle was the right decision. It's so consistent now. And then we ran that 669 on the eliminations against Atkins Grubworm, and won the event. There's a video from Grubworm looking at me from the side, and you can see that my car in first gear starts to wheelie up, and then you'll see Atkins comes by me in first gear. So my car hit wheelie control on that pass, and it totally slowed the car down. Which is like, if you watch the video from that side, you'll see it. And it like makes me feel like, man, there's so much potential left in this car, because it ran a 669 with the wheelie control coming on and slowing me down on that, and the most important part, and it still went that fast. So there's a lot of potential left in the car. That pass was done on the single turbo setup, so we were running a 98 millimeter turbo at that point, and we've since changed to a compound setup, which I think everyone has seen that, the compound setup, and we haven't even bested our 669 with the compound setup, even though we've gotten better 60 foots and shorter tracks. The top end just isn't quite there. So we're gonna be making some changes to the car to try to get that top end back. That's like the struggle for the last like year and a half, 2 years since that 669 pass, is just trying to get a 665 or a 659, you know. The goal is to, of course, to get the record, but the struggle that people don't really see is, you know, we make these changes and think they're gonna work, and they do sometimes, but they might have a fallback in another area, like in top end. We lost the top end. We haven't gotten that 221 mile an hour back with the compound setup. I'm leaning towards going back to a single turbo setup and putting the nitrous back in the car, turning it back into the way it used to work, with the clutch knowledge that we've gained through these last couple races. I feel like we can have the car come out of the hole like it should, and not have the inconsistencies that we had with the nitrous setup. So I'm hoping that we go back to a single with the nitrous, everything comes together, and we get that record back. So one of the things I think a lot about in my history is that car that's sitting behind me, and would all this exist without that car? Because my dad, you know, he took me out for rides in that car, and that's what I remember, you know, banging gears, and that made me want to, like, you know, get a car with the stick shift in it and go out and, you know, bang gears in it too. And you know, that car kind of set the stage for me and kind of built me into who I am, and made me want to be the stick shift racer that I am. I can't really ever not see myself doing this racing thing, or, you know, the car business side of things, you know, but if I ever was not doing it, I think where you would see me is probably on the starting line, standing next to my boy, taking over for me running the race car. And that might be someday down the road, but right now I don't really see myself not doing it. So I think everyone knows my cars, but not really everyone knows the real me and the story behind these cars. The values that were instilled in me through my family and through my work experiences. You know, all of this would not be possible without that work ethic, without my family supporting me, and without that passion for cars that it was you know, ingrained into me through my family, through my dad and my brothers. That's really what made me who I am.
this all started making me think of when you were like, yeah, I went like a 8 or a 720, and I started to think like, damn, 6s are like, they're possible. What happens when you go like a 620? what happens then?
Yeah,
I know like tenths are like a lot more important the lower you get, but
Change
like
the chassis.
yeah, like that 5 second stuff. I've heard guys talk about that, and I just don't think that's. I mean, I guess it could be possible.